Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
For our viewers who were not with us last week, this is going to be part 2 of that series. We had a delightful program, and we were traveling through mostly the country of South Africa with our guest, and she and her husband had spent a month in that tour, and we showed a lot of wonderful slides, and we talked about what that part of the world is like. And the good news is she's back for part 2, and there'll be some major differences from last week. In this show, we're going to particularly talk about the parks and the beautiful animals that they captured on photograph. And we therefore wish to welcome back Lorraine Landwehr. She is a certified public accountant in Kootenai County, Idaho. In addition to her business work, she is really known for her charitable work in our community, devoting a lot of her time and expertise to different programs, and is a great friend. And Lorraine, thank you for being back. We just look forward to this second show as much as we did last week. You were so energized and so excited about sharing this information.
Thank you, Tony.
And I'm pleased to have our 2 regular panelists, Janelle Burke, who is an attorney in the state of Idaho, and next to her is Erna Reinhardt, who is the Director of Public Relations at North Idaho College. And Janelle will start today's question.
Welcome back to the program, Lorraine. It was so fun last week to talk with you. It was just like going along with you almost, and we're very anxious to talk with you some more about those things. Now, one of the things, South Africa sounds a long way away. Southern Africa sounds a long, long way away. So how do you get there? And can you tell people that it's reasonably easy to get to those places, so that shouldn't deter them if they want to go?
No, it is probably just about as far away as you can go from the Pacific Northwest. The way we went, I believe, from this area is the easiest. We flew from Seattle on a nonstop flight to London. That's a 9-hour flight. And we spent a couple of nights in London. We had friends in Ireland, so we went to Ireland for 5 days. But the typical person would spend a night or 2 in London and just get yourself, reinvigorated to make the trip then from London to the main hub, Johannesburg, and that is an 11-hour flight. Then once you arrive, it's wonderful because this is a country where everybody speaks English. Some people have difficulty with language barriers, and for example, you travel off to somewhere like Thailand, you can't even read the signs or make out what it might say at all because it's not even the same alphabet, let alone language. So for some people, this would be a real plus. It's a beautiful, well-developed country, and South Africa is a very, the people are friendly, the food is good, and everything is clean. So
can you please give us some idea about the size of South Africa and the size of Zimbabwe in comparison to the United States?
I would say South Africa is probably as big as the western United States. If you took all of the western United States west of the Rockies, from the Canadian border to Mexico, and just kind of envision that much, only turned around because it's longer from east to west than and shorter from north to south. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Lorraine, explain to us a little bit about the currency.
The currency is the South African rand, and the exchange rate while we were there was right about 6 to 1. So, but when it comes to exchange rates and it comes to dealing with foreign currencies, you really kind of calculate in your mind what this is costing in U.S. dollars. And the one thing that we noticed about prices for hotels and restaurants and car rentals and that sort of thing, that the prices are very similar to the United States. The people that we met were Europeans who had told us about their trip to South Africa, some months before. And they thought that South Africa was really a very reasonable place to travel and that it was very inexpensive. But you see, that's from a European point of view because, as we all know, Europe is quite expensive. So from our perspective, we didn't think it was so inexpensive exactly, more that it was about the same as traveling around the United States.
What would you pay for a moderate hotel per night?
It depends. Now, it's similar to the United States that when you're in the big cities, hotels tend to be more. So it would be around, say, $200 a night in the city. But once you get out of the city, you could have a nice guest house or a bed and breakfast for maybe $60 or $70. And then I'm thinking in places like Durban on the Indian Ocean, beautiful hotel right on the beach, would still cost only perhaps somewhere between $100 and $150.
Excellent.
As we said last week on the show, that instead of going through it with an organized group, you got a car and you and your husband really crisscrossed the country and took your time and was able to really taste the culture and see things at a much slower pace. And one of the things you brought back that you and I, with our staff here, selected was some wonderful photographs as you went through the parks. And these are almost all about animals. And so our wonderful staff will put up the first photograph, and we have 15 of these, and you will take us through those as we did last week on the other scenes and other issues. These are just really breathtaking. So if we can have the first slide, we will go through those now. Having a little trouble, I guess, getting our slides up. And so maybe then I'll ask a couple of questions before they put the slides up. Tell us a little about the countryside and the parks and how they were, the national parks.
Well, the national parks are similar to the national park system we have here in the United States. You have vast open spaces that have been preserved. And the thing that's unique about the South African national parks is that the wild animals roam free. Well, I don't say that that's unique, because it's certainly the same thing in a place like Yellowstone or Glacier. The animals definitely roam free. It's just that you have these unique African animals.
Yes, they're very different from ones here.
And that's what makes it so special, and so sort of awe-inspiring.
And you can get the views of them really up close, can't you?
Sometimes, yes.
I've got the notes. I think they can go with the first slide now. And then here we go. And
now, these aren't awesome animals. These are ordinary goats on the side of the road. But the reason why we took the picture is because it's important for everybody to realize that some of this is just very typical. Most of this is very typical, where people live and work. They have houses and schools, and they have maybe small farms or, whatever. And these goats are just everywhere. Goats and lots of cows, and lots of ostrich.
Yeah, what a great, breathtaking shot this is.
Now, this is along the Indian Ocean. As you're traveling along the South African coastline, we were moving from west to east, so from the Atlantic side toward the Indian Ocean side. And this is just a photo along the edge of the road.
I just think this photo is something that we talked about. Maybe it's the time of the year you were there, but a lot of your photos you had, these are beaches were just empty. You had them almost to yourself, but there'll be times of year when there'd be a lot of people. So isn't that?
No, because there's no city. See, there's vast spaces, just like here in the United States, where there just aren't any cities.
Yeah.
There's just no population base in this particular
area.
These
kind of beaches would be like this most all the time?
Yes, here it would be. I mean, the beaches would be crowded in the cities where there are hotels along the beach. But this is just an open area.
So if you want to enjoy nature and get out yourself, you need to get out from the big cities, and then you can experience this kind of quietness. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing photograph.
This is just a photo of some average middle-class housing in a typical Zulu village. Most of this land is Zulu tribal land, and so the chief would give, say, permission to somebody to put a vegetable plot in a house. And you notice that almost every one of these homes has a little vegetable garden in the front. That was one of the reasons why we picked this picture, I believe, was because of you can see right in the very front there how they have their vegetable garden.
So you almost have three different, you showed some vineyards of where the wealthy homes were, and then this is kind of like middle class, and then you showed the poverty last week of where so there's a lot of variance in the economy. Mm-hmm. We'll go to the next picture, which is
This is a picture inside Kango Caves, is also part of the National Park System. And you can take a tour with a guide through the caves, and it's really quite interesting.
You would need to have a guide. You wouldn't want to go on your own.
They wouldn't allow you on your own. No, you must go in with a guide. For one thing, they're protected. Some of these stalactites and stalagmites have been ruined over the years from people touching them.
Okay. And then the next one is
right near the caves was this beautiful colonial-style house that's been restored and converted into a bed and breakfast. It was built right around the turn of the century in the old colonial days of South Africa. And it was a marvelous little place to stay. It was inexpensive. I think, I can't remember for sure, but I think we only paid about $70 to stay here. And the people are very gracious and friendly. But this is a typical kind of, when you're away from the city and you're in the smaller towns, there's usually something.
We took we can't do all the photographs here, but we took some of inside, and it's very beautiful, isn't it? Very nice furniture. I believe there was a fireplace.
A little swimming pool.
Now
Almost everybody. Oh, now we're in the Kruger National Park.
Yes.
And the Kruger National Park is about the size of Israel. So it's quite large. And the animals are not just everywhere. You have to spend some time driving. And, hopefully you get lucky and you get to see them up close.
This is water buffalo.
This is buffalo. They were grazing along the side of the road. The one thing you'll notice about my animal pictures is how close we were.
Yes.
We never got out of the car. You absolutely are forbidden by park rules to ever leave your car.
But they come close to your car, right?
They do. This is an example of places to stay inside. This is not the Kruger National Park. This is a different park, but they have similar housing. Well, not housing, but lodging is what the word I mean. And all of them have swimming pools because it's quite hot in this part of the country. So there's always a nice place to relax. And see, mostly you're driving around looking at the animals is going to be early in the morning or in the evening. In the heat of the day, they're napping in the trees, and you wouldn't.
And you
see
want
them.
to rest too, maybe.
And right, and so there's always a place to relax with your book at a swimming pool.
That's great.
This was a hyena on the side of the road. He was not very happy with my husband because my husband stayed in the car all right, but he started making some noises and to try to get this hyena's attention, and it annoyed the hyena. And he looked at us and curled his lip back, and I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to come right through the window in the car.
I'm sure he's thinking, here's another American tourist trying to disturb me. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
This is a zebra and her baby. I just barely got this picture because what they do is they maneuver themselves around so that the baby then would be hidden on the backside of the mother. And it doesn't take them very long. They just do this little sidestepping, and then the baby's hidden.
It's a protection, yeah.
Yes.
But
you see these animals along the side of the road. This is interesting because they've got these man-made forests. There were no natural forests, and so they've made you can see in the middle are the really small trees, and to the left side are the medium, and then in the background are the large trees, and then they're harvested for lumber and then replanted again. And you can actually drive through miles and miles of these man-made forests.
So they did a lot of conservation in the sense of doing, planting the trees. A lot of the policies like the United States where we replant. And I guess the next one's going to be about part of their industry.
Well, I think I mentioned before that there really is a lot of agriculture. One of those agricultural products is sugarcane. Sugarcane is just a very big product from South Africa. And this is a picture of a cane field and a mill, sugar mill.
And we're back to the animals again.
Now we are up in the Kruger National Park, and the giraffes, there were many giraffes everywhere. And it seemed like the giraffes, we don't have it here on the show, but I do have a photo. The giraffes and the zebras seem to like to be together. And I think it's because the zebras will graze on the ground and the giraffes would graze in the trees. And so they just kind of share the same territory.
It makes a good partnership.
Yes,
Very
it does.
nice.
This is good. You can see the lead elephant here is trying to come onto the road. What you can't quite make out is there's really a path there. Animals are known for following a path and repeatedly will use the same path. What we didn't know as we were driving on this road was that what these elephants were trying to do was get across the road on their path to the other side where there was the river, except that we happened to be sitting right in
The path.
So we backed up our car, and this entire herd of elephants, you can't see them all in this photo, there were probably over 20 of them, just walked right in front of our car.
And at one point you had to stay there quite, 2 hours or so before they...
That was a different elephant,
Yeah.
where he kept moving toward us and we had to keep backing up. But the elephants just have it. Well, most all animals have that. This habit, I guess is what I want to say, of just staying with a certain path. Well, you see it around here
Yeah,
with even deer and elk. They'll follow the same. You can see animal trails everywhere. But anyway, these elephants were great. And the thing that was so interesting to us is how they get so, they're so uninterested in the people. I mean, they're totally disinterested. So they just get right up close. You wouldn't dare or dream of getting out of your car. But they do come right close to you.
And there's a lead elephant too. Is there always
Pretty much they follow.
follow one? Mm-hmm. And the next one will be a real breathtaking photograph.
Look at these beautiful cats. There's a male and 2 females, and they were napping on the side of the road. And we sat there for the longest time, and they just every once in a while kind of yawn and stretch, but they never really would get up. And so we were waiting and waiting for them so we could take a good photo. Well, what happened was I was nearly out of film, and I asked my husband to reach into the back seat, and I said, in that paper bag, there's some spare film. I think I'll just get the camera ready now. What happened was, as you know, paper makes noise. And when he didn't recognize the sound, I had the car window down. The lions didn't recognize the sound of that paper rattling on that bag when he was getting the film, and they stood like that. Oh. They did it just perfect, where one stood up all the way, the one in the back stood up all the way, and the other one just lifted its head, so it looks like they're posing just perfectly. and they sat there like that for the longest time watching us. They were very interested in what it was we were doing with that strange sound.
Isn't that fantastic? And then the last one that we have for this program.
This is a very large teenage leopard, and he's eating a leg bone of an antelope of some sort. It might be an impala. I don't know for sure. But it was great because I didn't know this, but I'm sure a lot of people do. But leopards always go up in the tree with their food. They kill an animal and they take it up in a tree. They never, and also they're loners. They never stay together like lions will be. Stay together as a family or a group or pride. Leopards are loners. But anyway, this was an old grown-up teenager who was still with his mother. The mother's on the ground just below the tree. And she killed his food for him and gave it to him. And he went up in the tree with this leg bone from this animal. And the thing that was interesting to us is that he was much larger than his mother. And so we were told that what would happen is that she would be soon probably be ready to have, mate again and have another baby, and then she would boot this teenager out of the house. But right now she was still caring for him, and you can see he's just a big lazy cat up there in the tree.
And that is an incredible story. Okay, we'll go back to Janelle.
On this series of questions, I would like to ask you a number of things about safety in your travels. Now, we've seen a whole bunch of pictures about animals, and they're just absolutely gorgeous. And can you tell us what kinds of safety precautions should people keep in mind when they're photographing animals or even traveling around in areas where there are lots of animals?
The most important thing you can remember is to never stand up near a wild animal. So if you're in a car, even a convertible type car with no top, as long as you remain seated, you will be safe. Animals feel threatened by mankind because they've only been hunted when the people were standing up. We were told by a game warden there's 3 things that are very important to be safe around the animals. Always remain seated, then that way the animal does not consider you a threat. Never ever feed the animals because you don't want to be a source of food. In other words, they never, ever, it's absolutely forbidden because human beings should not be a source of food for wild animals. So as long as the animal does not perceive the human beings as being a source of food, they won't be looking for it. And the other thing is in no way compete. So there's no competition for food, there's no offering of food, and there's no threat. The absence of those things, and you're safe even quite close to them.
Well, they were beautiful pictures of the animals. What about safety in terms of where you eat and where you drive? Did you travel during the daytime, for example, in order to and make sure you knew where you were going by night? Or what kinds of things would you suggest?
Well, it's not a lot different than here. We didn't want to travel at night because, for starters, we were afraid we would miss something. And generally, you want to know where you're going to be sleeping. You don't want to be checking in, getting into a city or getting into a small town or whatever too late at night because they might be booked. So we always tried to be off the road by 3 or 4 in the afternoon and to get ourselves situated. And we just never felt unsafe. No different than in the United States. I mean, there are places, obviously, if I were going to Los Angeles, there are neighborhoods I would not venture into. It's the same thing in Johannesburg. On the other hand, there are places that are perfectly safe and it's just fine. We traveled with our doors locked on our cars when we were traveling through strange towns, and once in a while we get lost in city streets and that sort of thing. But we do that if we're in downtown Seattle. So I would say it's not that, you have to be sensible, but you don't need to be fearful.
And did you have a guide?
No. We had maps.
Thank you. That's good advice for everyone. Everything you've said here is good advice, no matter where we're traveling.
Mm-hmm.
Lorraine, I'm always interested in the shopping opportunities. So you mentioned in last week's program a little bit about the outdoor markets and how each town had its own little outdoor market. And I'm real interested in the outdoor markets as well as the artisans that you may have come about and some of the crafts that maybe they were selling.
Well, you see a lot of basket weaving. You see a lot of carving of, mostly they're Zulu masks and all sorts of sizes and shapes and odd designs, and some of them, just depending upon your personal taste, are more appealing, but they're exotic and they're interesting. Then also you see actually quite large carvings of animals. A lot of animal carvings, the rhinos and giraffes, and some of them can vary from a few inches to several feet in height. Just a lot of various, I would say carving and weaving are the two. Except that sometimes in some of the villages we saw some beadwork, and that was always interesting as well.
And how about in Zimbabwe?
No. Not much. There's some, but Zimbabwe is a lot poorer. But so you see, when we were in Zimbabwe, we just flew in for 3 days to see Victoria Falls and left, and we never really toured the country because it's quite difficult to tour that country because of the fact that you can't get fuel. You have to, and under the current government, it's just not a desirable place to go.
I have limited travel compared with you, but I have been abroad some, and I'm just going to have you to compare what I experienced. My most enjoyable days and most informative days when I would meet with some of the people without a time clock. I would go down to the food markets along the waterfront, and I remember spending over 3 hours with some university students. They were doing a survey of Americans, and it'd take 30 minutes. I said, I'll fill this out if you'll spend 3 hours with me. And took them to lunch, and we went over to the university and met with student government leaders and all. You had some of that same kind of experience, and if you'd share to our viewers who might travel, I'm thinking of the time when you met this gentleman somewhere on your trip, and he was so generous and took you for a whole day and on a trip.
Well, it had to do with, we were trying to get some funds wire transferred from home, and we were having a little bit of difficulty, and we were trying to do it over the internet, and we were working with Doug's brothers who live in Oregon, but as it turned out, the computer would go down, and then they were having this, and so we had to keep coming back to this place. What it was is kind of like an outlet for a bank, but it was in a mall, and so we had to keep coming back to this place and say, okay, we'll come back in 3 hours, or why don't you go have your lunch? And then, so we got to go, this fellow's name was Alistair, and we got to know him actually quite well because we were back in this place so many times, and he was starting to feel embarrassed about the whole thing. But somewhere along the line, he says, well, are you going to be here on Saturday? What are you doing? I have a day off. And we said, we're not doing anything. And he says, well, why don't I give you a little tour around? And we said, well, we have a rental car with unlimited miles. Why don't we just let you drive? So we just had a wonderful day, and he took us all over this area around Cape down to the Cape of Good Hope, and that's where we did last week's show, where we saw the penguins, and we went and had a beautiful lunch, and we went to fishing villages, and we just had a marvelous day.
So you did have a guide one day.
Yeah, yes. Yes, and it was fun. It was fun not to have to do the driving.
Yes, right. I think that everything's so positive and wonderful, but I believe you did have one bad experience in relation to some of your, you lost some of your ID and all.
Oh, that happened in London on the way.
That's what I thought. Yes.
Yeah, we had booked a hotel right in central London at Piccadilly, and one of the mistakes we made was trying to travel on the London Underground with luggage during a busy time, and so a pickpocket got into my purse and got my wallet. and I didn't discover it. And the hotel was right. We just were coming up the escalator out of the subway, they call it the tube, coming up out of the subway into the hotel. And as I was reached in my purse to get my wallet, because we were registering, I didn't have a wallet, and all the credit cards were gone. And I don't like to be an advertisement for American Express, but let me tell you, don't go home without, or don't leave home without it. It was just absolutely amazing what they are able to do for you in a situation like that compared to other credit card companies. There was an American Express office 2 blocks away, right in the center of London, and they issue you a new credit card and give you cash on the spot. And they also cancel all your other credit cards for you. Yes. And I mean, that was really important. But the problem is that we have learned to travel using ATMs, and we don't really carry much cash, and we don't use traveler's checks. Almost nobody uses traveler's checks anymore. So, but the problem was I couldn't use my American Express in an ATM. So cash was getting to be a big problem. I mean, you could use the card for meals, for lodging, or for whatever, but obviously in these markets or whatever, you have to have currency. So that's why we were trying to get funds wire transferred from my husband's brothers. And then that's how we met Alistair, and that's why we ended up having this beautiful day. So I guess there's a silver lining in this black cloud, because we had a wonderful day with him, and we saw so many things that we probably would have missed.
Knowing you a long time, you always find a silver lining, and that's what makes you so positive. Just one other quick note, we're about out of time. So one of the lessons here in traveling anywhere, like in Europe and all, about wallets or purses or whatever, there's a way to carry those that one should be very cautious, because I've had other friends in France and England to lose, and there is a problem to have to deal with all of that.
Right, and do separate everything. I mean, don't have your passport the same place as your airplane tickets, is the same place as your credit cards, and Right.
Just wise advice in that process. Well, Lorraine Landwehr, thank you so much for these 2 weeks. You've been an absolute delight, and I know our viewers have just really celebrated with you and enjoyed this trip via the television that we have, and we thank you very, very much.
This is fun.
And also to the panel, thank you for your fine questions, and our staff for all their wonderful work and pre-work that Kyle and the staff did concerning having these photographs that we could show. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll be with us again next week at this same time, when we will turn to yet another issue. And again, we'd like for you to tell us things you'd like to hear about. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.